This is Thomas Miles, nephew Tommy from the Steve Harvey Morning Show. As a radio personality, comedian, actor, and producer, I know what type of hard work and dedication it takes to make an impact in the world of arts and entertainment. MPAC Performing Arts Collective, a nonprofit for visual and performing arts, is doing just that. MPAC's mission is to cultivate the interests of visual and performing arts by exposing, educating, and entertaining. MPAC is dedicated to the formation of avenues into the professional world of arts and entertainment through several of its programs, including It's a Rap, Playhouse Theater, and MPAC Jazz. Through these programs, MPAC has launched film festivals, TV forums, music symposiums, comedy series and showcases, jazz shows, theater productions, acting and comedy workshops, and much, much more. All in an effort to create platforms for emerging talent and create access to industry insiders in an effort for those seeking careers in arts and entertainment to be successful. As a proud member of its advisory board, I would like you to support MPAC as a volunteer or as a donor. Please visit impact-arts.org today.
Greetings, this is Tanya Rockmore, and I would like to tell you about my friend, Jaylene Mack. Jaylene is not only an entertainment attorney, but this industry renaissance woman and activist has successfully integrated the demanding roles of wife, mother, TV and film producer, writer, actress, playwright, author, and the founder of MPAC Performing Arts Collective. Jaylene is a double HBCU graduate who received her bachelor's in political science with a minor in mass communications from Xavier University of New Orleans and her law degree from Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Texas Southern University. Her clients have consisted of an all-star lineup including Steve Harvey and LaToya Luckett, just to name a few. Jaylene has served as either producer or production attorney on dozens of movies and TV series. She's compiled a long list of acting credits in over 40 productions, including The Burial and Better Call Saul. As founder of MPAC, she has combined all of her resources, experiences, relationships, and Hollywood access and created programs and platforms to allow young, aspiring, and veteran artists to fulfill their artistic dreams. She is also a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. With 30 years of expertise, Jaylene remains passionate about using her legal and business skills to support artists and further their careers. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you now, Jaylene Mack.
a minute. I just found out that I have been muted. You know how the universe works? They are trying to suppress all the good things I have to share with you guys today. Why would they do that? Why would the universe try to suppress what I have to say to you guys today? The universe muted me at the beginning of this conversation. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start over and I'm going to tell you all the things I've been over here yapping about. So if you don't know, I'm Jaylene Mack. I am the founder of MPAC. I am your host for the day. We have a very, 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 very special guest for our virtual monthly speaker series. If you don't know, we have been doing this every month. Okay. I think since August, I believe we started. I'm so excited about our guest, but let me tell you what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about broadcast, cable, and streaming. Oh my! Exploring multi-platform content acquisitions with LJ Simpson. I'm so excited to have our special guest. But before I talk about him, y'all, we needed somebody to take care of the expense related to this free series, right? So we want to give a special shout out to Country Financial. They're the ones that underwrite the cost of this event. Although it's free to you guys, it still costs us something. So we appreciate your donations, any opportunities for a grant, a sponsor to take care of these things that we want to do for the masses. So thanks for supporting us. Just to give you a heads up, next month we have Natasha Ward, a casting director, that's going to come and speak to you guys that are producers and you're looking for a casting director. What does that mean for your production? As well as actors out there that are saying, hey, you know what? How can I impress a producer, a director through a casting director when I do an audition, right? And so she'll give you some tips on that. Make sure you're following us on social media. Make sure you're telling a friend. We cannot do this without you guys spreading the word for us. Nothing like a word of mouth. It beats a commercial. It beats a radio advertisement, okay? And so I want to take this time now to introduce my very, very special guest. Oh my gosh, you guys are in for a very, very special treat. LJ Simpson is an entertainment media professional. His experience at HBO Max, and Warner Brothers Discovery has allowed him to be well-versed in film and TV content acquisition, programming, and strategy. He currently works in streaming content acquisition. Without further ado, let's put our hands together and welcome LJ Simpson to the platform today. Hey, hey, LJ.
Hey, Jaylene, good to be here. How are you today?
I am doing fine. I'm doing fine. You're a dear friend and industry colleague to commit to MPAC to come here today. It's nothing like people who have the expertise, work at a higher level, to be able to give back to Hollywood aspiring talent, right? We have so many people out there that have the business acumen, but they still don't know how to sharpen those tools, right? And how do you sharpen to be successful in the business? You got to go to the experts and get those little golden nuggets. So thanks for being here today to kind of walk us through some of the things that we need to know when it comes to distribution on streaming platforms. I got to ask you, how did you get started in the entertainment industry yourself?
Sure. So I kind of always had this passion for entertainment. Most people don't know, but I actually started my interest and passion for the art started on the music side. So I'm a musician by trade, but I also kind of always had this creative streak about me as well. So not just songwriting, but also creative writing, writing like short stories and things of that nature. And originally I thought I wanted to be, like an entertainment lawyer because, we always have like these creative aspirations. But at the end of the day, we still, especially probably because my parents like kind of encouraged me, we still always kind of have like, want to be about business as well. So I thought the best way to converge these two things would be entertainment law. So I've studied like through undergrad and, had this mindset of being an entertainment lawyer. But then I realized I didn't really want to be a lawyer per se. I kind of wanted the access that lawyers had. So kind of like, when I graduated, I took a step back and try to see like, where was the industry headed? And I broke it down to how I looked at it was a difference between legacy media companies and kind of budding entertainment tech companies, and kind of seeing like, which way were the entertainment tech companies going, considering like, legacy media was still going through its changes as well. And I noticed that one of the big differentiators between the two was the need for data and understanding and leveraging insights. And legacy media companies were kind of getting there. But these entertainment tech companies, like the Netflixes of the world, or the Apples and Hulus, Amazons, they kind of already had these audience bases already from their other, day-to-day operations. And they were leveraging the data that they received through those operations for the case of making entertainment content. And like I said, legacy media companies were there on their way there as well. So by the grace of God, I went to business school and studied business analytics. And kind of like one of the first jobs that I got outside of business school was within, at the time, Turner Broadcasting's content acquisition team. And I told myself this was kind of like the culmination of everything I had been studying. I went to school and studied, kind of like entertainment industry and communications and the business side of everything like that. Had, like I said, studied like all this time to try to be a lawyer. So I knew through my various internships how to read contracts and everything like that. But it was kind of like once I got into the internship program for the content acquisitions after right out of business school, it was like everything coming together. So content acquisitions kind of like was this space of understanding not only how to read content and how to read contracts and license content, but also understanding like, how do we employ a programming strategy? How do you develop a programming strategy to make, what we all enjoy as film and TV happen on the day to day?
I love the idea that you were an artist first, right?
Yeah.
Because now being on that side, you understand the creative process, and you knew that going into the business side, what that takes, right, to build from a concept, an idea, to taking it to fruition, but then applying the business of entertainment and being an artist and being a creative. So I like that, because in this business you have to be a hybrid, and it's good to be not just on the creative side but on the business side. The fact that you wanted to be a lawyer, hats off to that. Hey, can't say that there's enough entertainment attorneys in the business, because I don't think there are.
That low scared me.
And I'm sure that part of your brain is still functioning every day, even on the streaming side, on the acquisition side. And because you kind of know off the top what's a good deal, right? What's not a good deal. So I appreciate learning that about you today. And I'm just gonna get this out the way. You my frat brother. This is a man of omega size 5. I don't expect anything less but brilliance over there. So
thank you.
Describe for us in your current role what your responsibilities are as a content acquisition professional, and what does that look like? What's most enjoyable about that today?
Sure. So I'll say it's a little bit of a two-parted answer to this. First and foremost, acquisitions is definitely much about partner management, both internally and externally. But it's also kind of like building out and understanding, how do you make programming, like execute on programming, right? Considering what's out there. And it's kind of like building a puzzle. And I'm gonna say the first part in terms of partner management is that we deal with both internal partners, so cross-functionally working with our programming teams, working with our marketing teams, whatever it may be, to kind of like, understand, okay, this is what the programming strategy is. How do we go out and work and manage partnerships with film distributors or independent producers to kind of meet in the middle to make film and television happen. The second part, kind of like the building blocks of like building a programming strategy, is understanding, like I said, we work with our internal stakeholders, a programming teams, a marketing team, to understand like what's the programming voice or what's the vision that we have for our network, platform, whatever it may be, and kind of like going out and securing content that fits that narrative that we want to put out there, right? So that's kind of like the puzzle piece, and like understanding like there's a lot of content out there. A lot of platforms and players might be in different niches or might be general audience, but how do you take what's out there to kind of put together this grand puzzle of this is what our offering is going to be? So it's a little bit of both sides of that. So my day-to-day, kind of what I do is understand, first what's the programming vision, and kind of get an idea and have like a kind of a running Rolodex of relationships in the industry of saying like, okay, I know producer A or filmmaker A is very good at creating, let's say high octane action thriller movies. Yeah. So having that knowledge and understanding that this producer is good at producing this type of content, and we might have that programming strategy in place for our network. How do I, bring the two together and kind of build a relationship with that producer to say, like, this is what we want out of your content to fill our programming schedule. So it's like basically the day-to-day tango. And of course, there's like negotiations in play, but it's kind of like coming together in that middle ground to make it all come together.
Yeah, and you don't have an easy job. I mean, it's
No.
right. It can be stressful. There's so much to weigh in terms of the content that you are even just reviewing to make a decision. Do I send it up to the higher ups? Do we get the green light to make an offer? And there's a lot that goes into that. I want to ask you, since you come from Turner Broadcast and you've worked in worked for HBO, and you've worked in the linear space, and you're in the streaming space now, can you explain in layman's terms to our listeners what's that difference in the linear space and the streaming space?
Sure. So I would say the biggest difference is kind of the space that you're working with. And when I say space, it's kind of like, for example, as we understand what traditional linear television is you're looking at essentially a programming schedule, right? You have 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, and then you have 365 days a year or whatever. And you're kind of looking at programming, and programmers are filling content within these blocks of space. But on any given year, it's finite, right? You only have so many slots to fill with content. So meaning that there isn't an infinite amount of content available to fill these space. Only so many things can be on the programming schedule at a time. Whereas with streaming, you're looking at kind of like a vast amount of inventory, right? There isn't the programming schedule per se. You're not, withheld to premiering a show at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night, right? You kind of have this open leeway space of like being able to have a lot of content readily available at one time. So that's kind of like the biggest differentiator, right? Because I've heard countless amount of times, people pitching series, particularly on the linear side, pitching movies, whatever it may be, but you're kind of in competition for that finite amount of space on the programming schedule until the next let's say to the next broadcast season or the next television season. And then you do the whole thing all over again, but you're competing with, like I said, other content that's also trying to get in the same space. So that's the biggest thing.
And I noticed, of course, in the linear space, if I'm watching, let's just say NBC channel, local channel 2, and I'm watching a TV show or a movie, there's going to be some commercial breaks in there. But exactly. I also notice in, let's say, streaming video on demand, in the AVOD space, there are built-in advertising spots. Do they kind of line up in the linear space, watching it on TV broadcast versus streaming?
It's kind of the same thought process, right? And the reason, you see ads in the broadcast space, but also some ads in the streaming space, and we call that AVOD or advertising video on demand. It just comes down to what the economic model is for that particular platform. So, on the broadcast, broadcast in both cable television space, the economic model is advertising. So a lot of the content that's scheduled within the programming schedule is there to kind of maximize and generate ad revenue, because it's kind of like this dance. Advertisers for whatever product are trying to reach audiences to sell and pitch these particular products to, for them to hopefully buy them. But how they get the audience there, of course, is by the type of content that's there. So depending on what the scope of the content is, determines kind of the quality of the audience. It's the same kind of thing on the streaming side, whereas it's not you have to tune in at a certain time or whatever, but we're still selling ad space to generate and pay for the content that we're licensing and selling this song and dance. And of course, to generate revenue for the platform and kind of still drive those audiences that are watching our platform to the products of those advertisers. So that's kind of the biggest difference. And then, of course, in streaming, you have other economic models as well. We have what we call SVOD, is a subscription video on demand. So meaning that you're paying, kind of like how Netflix kind of raises the price every now and then, Disney Plus, all these, they're like kind of their main model is a SVOD model, in which they generate the majority of their revenue via the paid subscription that you pay every month to access that content. So it's just a matter of what the economic model is. But as we see kind of moving future forward, is that a lot of companies to offset, maybe the idea of like a lot of audiences don't necessarily want to pay a subscription price, but they still want to access the content that's on the platform. A lot of companies that traditionally were or did have SVOD models are kind of slowly adopting AVOD models, so that they're adding and inserting ads. So it just all comes down to what the money making motives are.
What have you seen in terms of trends? Because now with streaming platforms and so many streaming platforms emerging really every day, every month, some much smaller, of course, having to compete with the bigger brands that are out there, but it's created multiple platforms for new filmmakers or filmmakers that don't have as much access, right, or as many relationships in the industry to get their projects distributed and seen by the general public. Are you seeing less, just in the industry in general, not necessarily at your network, but are you seeing the trend that filmmakers are pitching to more streamers and less buyers on the linear side? Is that kind of the overall? Is there a decline? Is there any way to, have you seen a measurement of that?
I would say that's generally the case across the entertainment industry. Kind of going back to, because like I said, with the linear side, you're dealing with essentially a finite programming schedule that has only but so much space for certain content. Whereas there's a greater flexibility in streaming, because like I said, you kind of have a lot of inventory that you're able to play with. Like they have a lot of space. There's no programming schedules. It's essentially quote unquote infinite, depending on like how much volume the platform wants at one time. So yeah, I'll say that like a lot of independent filmmakers in general are kind of opting more for streaming because of the flexibility and the openness to that type of content. Traditionally, how it looks like it's going, and it kind of has been with linear television, is that they're kind of going for bigger swings because, like I said, you're dealing with this finite schedule, and you're trying to kind of go back to I call it the eventizing, or like making every major tentpole thing on linear kind of like an event, right? You're trying to get a lot of people at one time. So this is where we're starting to see more live events that take place, like these like award specials or whatever. And even like sports is another category where it's like every game or every match within a sports content offering is kind of like the big event that you're gearing up towards. And that tends to be the case a lot for linear. A lot of streaming players are also getting into that space as well, kind of like the big ticket streaming players that have the pockets to buy and license sports rights, such as like Amazon with their Thursday Night Football and stuff like that. But they generally still have the ability and the scope to be much more flexible with like their general streaming offering.
So tell me, what are you looking for currently? Even within your own realm of possibilities of what really speaks to you, right? What you might be interested in, presenting to your team in terms of genre of projects, also whether they're features or documentaries. Give me just like a general there, but then also kind of work with us in allowing us to know what your process is on your end to identify projects that really speak to you. Sure.
So kind of like what I do personally in terms of looking for content is, of course, like the story has to be there, right? Like we're at the end of the day, we're all storytellers in this space. And I think all artists deep down inside are storytellers, whether it's, whether your medium is film and TV, whether it's like visual, or at some point you're trying to tell a story or relay a certain message. So strong storytelling is always a plus for me. Regardless of like what the genre is, so long as like the story is being told well, and also accessibility of the story. Like not only is it like a story that the intended audience can understand, but also there's some through line or some touch point that makes it general enough for like anybody to watch it and be able to kind of like get a message out of it, right? So that's what we kind of look for, and that generally tends to be the case across all programming. I feel like that's kind of like the success metric for all programming. Key in point, Game of Thrones, right? Like it's a fantasy kind of this mythical type storyline, but at the end of the day, it's a family drama, right? Similar to another HBO show, The Succession is a family drama. Like the key kind of focal point is like the family drama is what we're looking for across that. But it also depends, like, a lot of, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, a lot of streamers and platforms have their individual programming voices. Like, does the content that's in play or that's available to us match the programming voice of the platform? Because not everything will work for every platform.
Right.
And I think that's kind of like a hard reality for a lot of us creatives in general, but kind of like to hear is that your art might not be might not be received on all platforms, and it just might just be because like it might not sync. So just understanding what the audience is looking for that platform, or what the platform is looking for those particular audiences, is a big key.
How important do you think it is for a filmmaker to have a game plan? And by that, I mean, or obviously a business plan, but by that, I mean, some filmmakers have an idea of some story that they want to tell, right? And I noticed there's no thought to distribution. There's no thought to their audience. There's no thought to, is this a story that resonates with the masses, or is this just something that you find interesting personally, right? What kind of advice would you give to a filmmaker who has a story idea that's going to later shoot it and look for distribution? Is there something, some advice that you can give them to consider before they basically start rolling cameras, or maybe even before they put pen to paper as far as the script is concerned?
Yeah, no, always have a game plan, right? And it's kind of like this is kind of where it's like the tough love conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like, kind of going back to the point of like all art isn't for everybody, and then like there's the creation of like art for art's sake. At the end of the day, this is a business, so there should always be like some idea of like a commercial aspect in mind, particularly if you're looking to be a creator that's trying to get yourself placed or trying to get yourself sold. Because like I said, if you're dealing with linear television in a case, or even like AVOD television in the case, like, your content has to generate ad revenue, and people have to be able to, at the end of the day, sell ads in your content. Understand that there has to be like some degree of a commercial element there. Not saying like, your product or your film has to be like a product and it has to have like has to be like a commercial, so to say. Like, you have to be constantly selling something, but you have to have the ability to understand commercially like that this is the audience that it's going to bring. And so it's kind of hard to hear that at times, because a lot of content that's out there that's really, really good, it's like very, maybe art house in a sense or whatever, but it's art for art's sake, and so the scope of it is very minimal. So because it has like, maybe even has like a really strong following, but unless that strong following can translate into money being made for whoever is licensing the content, then chances are it's just not going to get picked up, unless, like I said, like there are niche streamers, art house streaming platforms out there, such as like a Mubi or like a Criterion Collection, a Topic, that focus on this more art house content. But for like kind of like the ones that we have in the top of our minds, like Netflix, Hulu, even HBO to an extent, there has to be some type of mass appeal play and kind of like a commercial understanding. Yeah. So definitely get well versed in understanding distribution, understanding that this is like the typical distribution phase is like a windowing. So understand that, like, maybe if you're doing a film, the film is going to start in theaters, and from theaters, it's going to go to what we call like a pay one window, or go to like a like a HBO or a Showtime or something and be shown there. And then from there, it's going to go to like a pay two window or like an AVOD window. So it's just going to basically go from window to window to window. But through that entire process, it has to be able to have an audience that follows it, or an audience that will be discovered by it being on the platform to make it a commercial success.
How important to you is it that a filmmaker who brings you a finished product, it's been at various film festivals, right? And they want to use that data to convince you that this is a great project for your platform, and or they want to use that data to negotiate what their cut should be, so to speak. Now, I think with film festivals in general, obviously all of that stuff is kind of relative. And just because somebody's won an audience approval award or the best director award doesn't necessarily tell us the whole story about the festival itself, the size of the audience,
Yep.
what films were you up against, right? You don't necessarily know all of that. How much do you consider projects that have won placement in film festivals, and what's your recommendation, even been on the other side of that, for the filmmaker who's relying on that information? And that's whether they're getting an AVOD, SVOD, linear deal, whatever the case might be. Do you have some advice on that?
Just in terms of like film festival, just be able to show that, kind of like what I was saying in the previous question of like, how will the audience
Mhm.
expand, right, as a result of it? Like in most cases, it's easy, and that can contribute to marketing as well, right? Like it's easier to say like, this is a award-winning film, it has critical acclaim, so that in and of itself could be a strategy to say like, okay, because it has critical acclaim at this particular film festival, like you said, it matters what the film festival is, to see if that will translate, to a wider audience down the road, or even like a very, very like engaged audience, but just something that can show like it's going to be somewhat of a commercial success. So just be able to have your ducks in a row and understand, like how, be able to explain how does this translate to something bigger, and kind of like honestly, like, try to explain to a studio or to a platform, like, what would they be missing out on, right? Like maybe, this particular film, depending on the strategy of the studio or the platform at that time, could be a acquisition play, in the sense that, not by acquiring this film, it can lead to what we call like audience or subscriber acquisition. So it could bring people to the platform, because those are always things that are worth noting as well.
Do you find yourself making any type of ethical or cultural considerations when you're evaluating content that's being provided to you?
I do.
Okay.
That's just kind of like how I am. That's like trying to understand, like what's the bigger story being told here, right?
Right.
How does this, at the end of the day, by my platform adopting this particular film, this particular series, like what does that say about us having adopted this, right? What kind of message are we kind of putting out there? So yeah, I'm very mindful, both ethically, like, morally, just like, and then culturally, like mindful of um, what art or like what message is being spread.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if someone's sitting down with a taking a meeting with someone like you,
Mhm.
what kind of advice would you give them to prepare for that meeting? And this is their first meeting and they're pitching their project, hoping that you guys would extend an offer to license the material.
Going back to kind of like, what is the scope of the project, right? Like, do you like, can you convey that this is the audience for it, but this can be the audience for it, right? Because at the end of the day, particularly the platforms that I work with, that are like, ad centric and like ad field, we have to be able to understand, like what's the commercial
Mhm.
ramifications there of us having the content on there. Is it a good story? Like, are you able to kind of like, maybe a little bit more than an elevator pitch, because I'm a little bit more
Sure.
generous than that. But can you kind of like, flesh out and kind of sell me on what the story is, right? Going back to your previous question, like, what are the, if any, kind of like the cultural significance, or like what are you
Mhm.
trying to contribute to the general conversation of what the topic of the film is? Like, kind of like how can you expand upon that, or like educate, um, how are you educating a viewer or audience member by, them watching the content? um and then like just kind of show, going back to kind of the commercial aspect, but kind of show that you've studied and understood what the platform currently has going on, right? Like,
Mhm.
can you explain and see how the content fits into the existing objectives, or the existing, programming strategy of the platform that you're pitching to?
So can you give us an idea of what just the general process is? So you've taken a pitch meeting, you like the pitch. What would they send you next for full consideration? Would they send you a trailer? Would they send you the entire movie to look at, or one sheet? what might you get from that filmmaker next?
Any and all information is appreciated. I do know sometimes I get things, even though I generally deal with the acquiring of completed content. I do know some things are like kind of like in like maybe post production or in those kind of various staggered stages of having been done. So I will accept like screener links or like one sheets. I've even read scripts a number of times. So done like some script coverage stuff here and there. Just like any product or any package that kind of fully sells the idea, right? Because there are some people, that you'll be pitching to at times who might not have the imagination, for lack of a better word, to kind of like understand what's going on, especially like, if you don't have anything to kind of like show them that, because some people, have to be handheld and have to understand like, what's going on. Fortunately, I think I'm one of those people who can kind of get the gist of a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, like just having that, a deck is also appreciated as well. That shows like kind of, that you took time and took thought into what you're pitching.
So let's say you've seen any one of those things, you like what you see, offer a deal, enter into a contract, we pass the contract. What's the general next step, starting with delivery, or what else might be required as metadata or whatever that looks like on the other side of sealing a deal?
It's usually just kind of like make sure you have, and I don't really deal too much with the operational side that often. But the platforms that I've been on, it's kind of just make sure you have everything up to spec. A lot of these platforms have like certain specifications for certain things, so they want to make sure that the quality is really, really good. Typically, like now, because we're in the 21st century, people kind of like want things in HD or things that have been like upscaled to HD.
Yeah.
But there are like a bunch of classic films as well that are on platforms that might still be in SD. But typically, like I said, good quality. Depending on the format of the television, like make sure like there's like markers in place for if it's like going to a AVOD platform, because like we do have to insert ads here and there. So just make sure everything is like up to spec, but like ultimately just making sure it looks good.
And they would receive like a list of deliverables, I take it, right, with a timeline.
Yeah, a lot of these platforms have like their specifications.
Right. So you receive the materials. They've gone through delivery. What's the time frame just generally before a project you've seen, whether platform to platform? What's the window of it being released on the platform, and then how does placement on the platform work?
It depends. Depends on like the load of the team that's responsible for that. Things can take weeks, and then depending on like what the initiatives are for the platform, things can be kind of held to be like in tandem with certain releases, like in tandem with certain like maybe events that are taking place or different like editorial things. So it honestly just depends on the turnaround time. But like I would say like usually like a few to like a couple of weeks is kind of normal, because mind you, it has to go through like a QC process and make sure that everything's up to snuff or whatever. Things, if some things are wrong or whatever, they have to go like kind of get sent back and start over. So those things tend to take time.
I see in our chat, Donna Marie says she has a burning question. Please, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and drop your question in there, and I'll definitely ask LJ and try to get that answer for you here. LJ, what's the general term of a contract for streaming? And again, I know these things vary, but what's the going rate, so to speak, on the length of terms?
Like I say, it kind of varies. Like I've done deals that have been like 2-year terms. I know when I do a lot of HBO short film stuff, that tended to be the case. It honestly just depends. Some contracts, agreements or whatever, depending on who you're working with, they might have like 1-month terms, right? Because I know when we deal with like certain studios, we're licensing films for like maybe a particular thing. So like we're licensing Christmas films, right? We might have a Christmas film for like, 30 days or maybe like a 2-month period, because it doesn't really make sense for us to kind of pay to have Christmas films on a platform outside of the Christmas holiday, unless we're like doing something special. So it honestly just depends on kind of like what's the scope of what's taking place.
And then I know I mentioned placement.
Oh yeah.
So what does placement look like on a platform for a content provider?
That also depends on the platform. A lot of platforms have what they call kind of like their top 10. Like you see, like Netflix recently implemented like a top 10. That's kind of fueled based on people who are engaging with the platform, and that tends to be a case with a lot of these platforms now too. They're using like algorithms and machine learning to kind of surface to the top what a lot of people are already watching. Like spread the word to other people on the platform who might not have watched it yet. There are also different, like I mentioned, like editorial or curatorial type things that are taking place. So holidays are coming up. There might be a carousel of holiday titles that are going to be like front and center on the platform. It could also be in accordance with like films tend to go in and out of theaters, or maybe there's like a major release coming up and you have the prequels to like a sequel film that's coming out in theaters. Like those things will kind of get prominent placement. So it just depends like what the strategy is at the time of the platform. It could be the case that like there might be like a well-known director who has like another project coming out, and therefore like to kind of spur people to to interact more with that director's content. There might be like a bunch of other stuff from that same director that might just surface to the top. So it all just depends.
Is there a window of time that you recommend? And I'll give you a scenario. You have a filmmaker has a romantic comedy film. Valentine's is coming up.
Yep.
What's the latest you think they should be trying to get a meeting or get a pitch session, or at least get a submission to a network for consideration to have a release around that holiday?
Honestly, I would say like by the end of December, because the sooner you can get there, the sooner it can be in consideration. Because mind you, a lot of having been in programming specifically myself, a lot of these initiatives and like curation or themed events are planned and scheduled like way in advance before actual February comes, right? Like even right now, like I've been in conversations with partners and people and who are like discussing like what are we going to do for Black history, what are we going to do for women's history in March, like like these things are already being thought of. So yeah, definitely like the sooner the better. And you kind of like if you're in a fresh pitch or whatever, you can kind of like drop that little nugget as well. It's kind of like give people like a little bit of push, like of like where your head is at and what you're thinking about. So yeah, just definitely like as soon as possible, but still like make sure you place those seeds in the minds of the people you're pitching to.
So Donna Marie, and shout out to Donna Marie, she's part of my mod squad, and I see Danita Patterson in here as well. Shout out to all the team. Donna Marie says he is well versed in the game of distribution and creative fare. So
thank you.
Got a compliment. But and I know we're talking about finished projects, and we're talking about the particularly AVOD deals more so in this conversation. But her question is, how important is bringing sponsorship to a distribution deal? Does it work in filmmakers' favor? What is required of the sponsorship partnership? Is that something that you can answer?
Yeah, and I think it also like just depends on the platform, honestly. I know we're speaking particularly about AVOD. A lot of these companies that have AVOD platforms, because first and foremost, if they're getting into AVOD, chances are they either have an existing, let's say a lot of legacy media companies that deal with broadcast. If they're switching over to AVOD, chances are they already have a lot of ad sales teams or like these ad teams that they've worked with before and internally, because that's their bread and butter. A lot of new companies, like they're getting an AVOD, like a Netflix. They're hiring and building out ad teams because they want to get into AVOD. But needless to say, it depends on kind of like what's the expertise and what's the current scope of the team that's in place. Some platforms look favorably on partners bringing like sponsorship and kind of like, being able to say like, hey, this is a sponsored project. We can bring, this buyer or this advertiser to your platform to make something happen. A lot of, companies tend to look favorably on that. Some others might want to might want to have that responsibility sit solely with their ad team. So it is honestly just depends, but I would say more often than not, it's good to either to have in mind, that you have a sponsor or you have an advertiser in play to kind of bring them to the table. Because even if even if the company has a team existing already in place, it's usually not a problem for them to kind of like for you to make that introduction and for them to manage that relationship with that advertiser. But it all just depends.
Yeah. How important do you think marketing is? I notice some filmmakers don't always include legal fees or marketing in their budgets.
Mhm.
And then once they're past post and they have a finished product, they're like, oh my God, I got to buy a plane ticket to go to a film festival. I need to pay for blah, 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 right? How important is it, even if a filmmaker has a deal for distribution, how important it is for them to also personally market their own project?
Marketing is very important, and I think like there's no industry, even entertainment included. There's no industry that I know that doesn't benefit in any way from a lack of marketing. Right?
Mhm.
You want to have marketing. Going back to the point I made earlier about the commercialability of a product or of a film, um, that building that audience, like as the film is in production, as the film is ready to come out, that is all marketing, right? Being able to have that audience and kind of instead of like once the title is on the platform, having to market it like at that point, it's easier and it's always better to have a built-in audience kind of follow it to the platform, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So marketing is definitely important.
I have another question from Donna Marie. What's the difference between a distribution deal and a licensing deal?
Sure. Um, Depending on what side of the coin that you're on, they can be the same thing a little bit. A distribution deal is usually kind of the deal in which you make. I'm assuming Donna is a filmmaker or like a producer. So a
Yeah.
distribution deal is basically the deal that you make with a distribution company. So they're responsible for getting your film or getting your television series in the right place, like onto the right platform, right? So they're kind of like the middleman
Mhm.
between like a direct platform and you. So a distribution deal could be anything in the sense of license platforms license rights from rights holders, and in most cases the rights holder at that point that we're working with is the distributor. So the distribution deal or distribution company is responsible for getting your film onto the platform. They're also responsible in some cases, if it's a film, getting it like out to theaters. Like if you want to set up like a theater showing, like want to have 1,000 screens for your film, that's the job of the distribution company. A licensing deal is just kind of like who is the rights holder at that given time, right? So like I said, it can be kind of the same thing if you're a distributor and you're looking for films to distribute. You will license the rights from a from a filmmaker to be able to distribute the film on their behalf. Like so, a licensing deal on my end would be I'm licensing the rights I'm licensing the rights to exhibit the film from a distributor who licensed the right from you to distribute the film, if that makes sense. So it's like
Yeah.
it's basically kind of like where are the rights in that given moment. So the rights to exhibit, in this case, on my end as a platform content acquisitions exec, is that we're licensing the rights to exhibit. And then like they can get a little bit more granular. We're licensing the rights to exhibit on, let's say, on an AVOD platform, because like rights can be divvied up, right? So you can have the ability to license the license rights to exhibit on AVOD. Can also have like a different company like a Netflix or HBO Max. I'm sorry, Max now, or a Max that can has the license rights to exhibit on SVOD. So that means like even though like a Netflix might have an AVOD tier, they don't have the rights to exhibit on AVOD. They only have the rights to exhibit on SVOD because I have the rights to exhibit on AVOD. So things can be like divvied up like that. So which is why you kind of sometimes see films on certain platforms at the same time, or see films solely on one platform because they license the entire rights of the film. So that's a really good question, though, the difference.
Yeah.
between this
Yeah, because there's sub licenses. And I noticed also sometimes there are so there might be one streaming platform that will take that film who has a sister company for linear, right?
Mhm.
And exhibit the film or the TV series or whatever on its linear platform. But also I've seen a network take content to a whole nother company, like a whole nother network. Let's just say it's HBO and they take it to Netflix. You follow me?
Yeah.
Or let's just say it's BET and they take it to Netflix. I've seen deals like that too.
Yeah, so like rights management, kind of like the the divvying up of license rights can get complicated, but it's kind of just understanding, like who has what right at what moment.
That's right. That's right. Right. Now tell me, what are you seeing? And we'll get to wrap this up because we're approaching 1 o'clock. What are you seeing as trends or the next big thing for the benefit of filmmakers? Just like we evolve from cable and the linear platforms and going into theaters to the streaming space, what do you see as the next model, or are you hearing anything as far as another way for filmmakers to get their content out, or a new technology? AI is taking over now, right? And that's the new hot thing. So what are you
Mhm.
hearing?
That's a good question. I think given, thank God, the end of the SAG strikes.
Thank
I know, right?
Yes.
No, I think like this kind of like we're in an interesting space because I'm seeing a lot of things in the sense of um, at least what I foresee happening is a little bit more transparency
Hmm.
in terms of like what is actually going on with the performance of content on platforms. It's usually been the case, prior to like titles will perform on a platform and the rights holders would have no idea of like how was this doing, right? But now because like through like the strikes and kind of these different conversations, there's a push for a little bit more transparency in that.
Yes.
Um, I also kind of like when I was speaking about the divvying of rights, I see that definitely happening a lot of where people or filmmakers aren't putting all their eggs in one basket. They're kind of being able to take advantage of some of these platforms have like what we call like non-exclusivity
Hmm.
to license rights, which means like you're able to license on one platform, but at the same time you're still able to have your film available on another platform. And so you're kind of pulling from different, uh, having multiple streams of income, if you will, from the same film, from a single film, I should say.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of that as well, kind of like this kind of fragmented idea of like I can kind of divvy up and not put all my eggs in one basket, kind of pull from a lot of different places at one time.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. LJ, I thank you for being here today. If I tell you you've shared a wealth of information, that's an understatement. You have great compliments in the feed.
Oh, thank you.
You have an expertise that we all need to hear from. And the streaming space. The one thing I can say is, as there's so many platforms, and a number of platforms have thousands of titles, but there's still room for more, and
Yeah,
that's a great thing, right? That's a great thing. And so we appreciate you sharing those tips on submissions and making decisions before pen to paper. Oh, I did want to ask you one more question. Something you said earlier when you talked about coverage. And I know
mhm.
I asked you the question about what kind of advice you would give somebody before they put pen to paper or before they start rolling cameras. How
Yeah,
important is coverage? And can you tell us what coverage is?
sure. So coverage is the idea of I think I told when I was talking about like reading scripts, right? The idea of like kind of fully understanding the scope of the story of what's going on, right? Like so it's basically just reading the script and understanding, from my perspective, is the story good? What makes it good, and kind of like how do we expect it to interact with like the audiences, or like what kind of audiences, like what would the audience reaction be, right? Prior to anything ever like being filmed, everything, you know, being able to visualize that. So I think coverage is very important, because it allows you to kind of like pinpoint maybe elements that you didn't think would probably work that well, or like maybe might not transfer over as well as you initially thought. Kind of getting that feedback is a good feedback stage, I would say, to kind of understanding, you know, how can I make this commercially viable? And by commercially, I'm not, like I'm saying, I'm not saying like, you know, oh, you gotta be able to put ads in or everything, but commercially viable in the sense that like it makes business sense for this to be made or for this to be on this platform. So no, coverage is definitely definitely important.
And to add to that, in layman's terms, it's like a report card on
Exactly.
a script, right? And it does, in some cases, get a pass or fail, right? You know,
Yeah.
go back to the drawing board grade. I've seen in some of the components of coverage, script, character development, story structure, things like that, right? That you would be given comments on, and a lot. And if your script raises more questions than answers, right?
Yes.
You know, that might be a sign to go back to the drawing board. And I brought that up because a lot of young filmmakers, like I said, they're just filming this story that resonates with them. They may have personally written it, but sometimes we have these scripts and we never give it to a professional to look at. And I try to encourage young filmmakers, young writers, don't just give it to your mom to read.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, give it. That was my next point. Like, give it to multiple people because people read and digest things differently, right?
Right.
So you know, give it to people, you know, who you admire and like, you know, think highly of you and your writing skills, but also give it to people who like might be a little iffy on you as a like not only as a person, but you as like a talent, because they might be, you know, in a position to see something that you might have not seen in that given moment, or might be more open to giving you like an honest critique. So give it to multiple people, get multiple views, and then from there kind of iterate as needed.
Yeah, sometimes you have to get out your own way, and you know, I know this is your baby that you birthed and put great care in, but you really do have to run it by somebody else with some unbiased eyes, but somebody who has a knack for the business to understand, like you said, what's marketable, what is this sellable? You know, is it sellable if you put your own money to it, or you take money from investors and you produce? Is it likely that this movie might make its money back? You know, will it be seen?
Yeah, because that's what investors are definitely interested in, right? They're not doing this. Oh, some I'm gonna say not all of them, but like they're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart.
No. And again, unless it's your mama, you
know, and even then, she might expect something on the light bill once day.
Right. And even mama might be like, I'm gonna give you this 5,000, but you're gonna sign this contract. I'm an investor, I'm an executive producer now. So anyway, but again, thank you so much for being here today. This was wonderful. You are super knowledgeable and definitely an expert in your own right. And at some time in the future, we'd love to have you back, whether it's this capacity or another, because you are a music artist. So maybe, you know, you can come on here live one day or in person. And are you playing an instrument as well?
Yeah, so I do play, I play saxophone. So
okay. Very classy. Very classy. So a jazz musician artist?
Yes.
This is an intellectual experience.
Gotcha.
You know, this is very nice. Another little nugget to have learned about you today. So again, thank you. The chat is lighting up, and they're thanking you. And these are great questions, and you gave great answers. And Donna Marie says, "Thanks for introducing us to him, Jay. So he's brilliant."
Thank you.
And again, hats off. So thanks again, LJ. I appreciate it. And I'm going to let you go so that you can enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Yes, thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Bye, LJ. Whoa, guys, that was great. I really appreciated him. And I always I try to ask the questions from a perspective of the filmmaker, because obviously as a lawyer, I kind of know some of these. I know most of these already, unless it's more on the kind of the business side of the networks and how they work internally. But I definitely want to try to ask the questions that you guys need answers to in the simplest form. You know, let's not talk big words and all this stuff. Let's keep it simple. We want to just get right to it. So thanks for tuning in. I want to make sure you guys are passing the word about these virtual speaker series. They happen every month. Again, the next person that's going to be speaking is Natasha Ward. She's a casting director. She's cast many, many movies. You can look her up on IMDb. If you guys like what we're doing, it's free to you guys, but it does cost us to put these events on, from running the streams to doing the graphics and getting the word out. And we have other things that we have throughout the year. We have some grants that we're going to be giving out. We have some scholarships that we're going to be giving out in the spring. So, and other programming notes. We have a reader series. So there's lots and lots of things that MPAC's doing. So make sure you visit our website and to find out more about us, and stay tuned on the end if you didn't catch the beginning to see our kind of overview video that gives you a sense of what we've been doing for some time. If you want to donate $5 or whatever that is, please go to MPAC's website and you'll see the donate button on there. And I'm sure that graphic will be up if it's not, but that's impact-arts.org. Also want to, again, if you will follow us on social media on all our platforms, we're at Houston MPAC. That's Houston MPAC. We're a small organization trying to make a big impact. So, and again, we want to get the word out to the masses. So if you let them know that we're here, that we exist, we are rooted in Houston, Texas, but what we do is for everybody across the country. We've even supported some people from an international perspective. We've had people come in from London for some of our events, and much, much more. So that's basically it. I wanted to make sure you guys know this. Did you notice my little friend in the back? You guys know, Danita knows, I'm a huge Will Smith fan. That cutout is from the Blockbuster days when they used to do those floor displays, and they were so kind enough to let me keep that. And that's my boo thing in the metaverse. That's my baby daddy in the metaverse. Mm-hmm. I don't care what's going on in the world with him right now. That's a good man. I love me some Will Smith. So y'all see he's in here in this live checking us out and having some fun with us today. And then if you see in the background, The Burial, there it is. If you haven't seen it already, make sure you check it out. The Burial is on Amazon right now, starring Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones. It's a wonderful, wonderful courtroom drama. And your girl plays the jury foreman. Yes, I do. So check out the movie if you haven't seen it already. I think it's going to win lots of awards, or should definitely be nominated for lots of awards. So check out The Burial today. But again, thanks guys for being with us today. I really, 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 really appreciate you so much. More to come, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
This is Thomas Miles, nephew Tommy from the Steve Harvey Morning Show. As a radio personality, comedian, actor, and producer, I know what type of hard work and dedication it takes to make an impact in the world of arts and entertainment. MPAC Performing Arts Collective, a nonprofit for visual and performing arts, is doing just that. MPAC's mission is to cultivate the interests of visual and performing arts by exposing, educating, and entertaining. MPAC is dedicated to the formation of avenues into the professional world of arts and entertainment through several of its programs, including It's a Rap, Playhouse Theater, and MPAC Jazz. Through these programs, MPAC has launched film festivals, TV forums, music symposiums, comedy series and showcases, jazz shows, theater productions, acting and comedy workshops, and much, much more. All in an effort to create platforms for emerging talent and create access to industry insiders in an effort for those seeking careers in arts and entertainment to be successful. As a proud member of its advisory board, I would like you to support MPAC as a volunteer or as a donor. Please visit impact-arts.org today.